I accept that some of the issues may have been overtaken by events, while others may have recent developments. The first issue, Chair, I've put in that correspondence is the issue of that the retired Hawks Colonel, Kobus Rulofse, told the Madlanga Commission under oath that Advocate Andre Johnson shared or facilitated the sharing of the complainant statements, the J88 medical report, and an audio recording with Major General Khan before he made his warning statement. That submission has not been contradicted. So that is actually 101 interference with a criminal investigation, which amounts to defeating the ends of justice. Advocate Johnson herself has confirmed that a criminal docket has been opened against her, but there's been no further progress. So, Chairperson, the point here is that the independence of the NPA is not a license for indefinite delay. So I'm calling for the accountability by those with the levers of power in terms of our constitution, and for this committee not to be a helpless bystander. The docket must be finalized and Advocate Johnson must be brought to book. That's the first issue. Secondly, Chairperson, on the 16th of July, the MK party called for Advocate Johnson's suspension pending a fitness inquiry. The NDPP acknowledged receipt, no inquiry followed. Instead, on the 27th of July, the president hurriedly, I must underline this, hurriedly accepted her resignation with immediate effect on a 24 hours notice before any inquiry could begin. So as the MK party, we contend that resignation from accountability should not be condoned. So I asked the minister whether she recommended or supported that decision, and if so, on what basis, given the scary revelations at Madlanga Commission? Why was she not suspended and put through an inquiry process like Advocate Chauke? Or, in fact, is that process reserved just for Africans? I wanted to put it to the minister if she was here. I'm hoping that the deputy minister is here, that if no accountability measures are brought in the interest of justice, South Africa has just witnessed the great escape, a resignation engineered with such haste that it insulated a senior official from scrutiny and accountability, with the minister and the president as its facilitators. It's a very sad observation, and I'm hoping that I'm wrong. Thirdly, Chairperson, we also wrote a correspondence on the 21st of July in support of our earlier submission. That correspondence sought to clarify an objection to the appointment of Judge Rawlinga as IDEC oversight judge. We make no allegations of actual bias. We apply simply the Constitutional Court's own test, which is reasonable apprehension of bias. We put it no higher than that. And all of that based on the facts that Judge Rawlinga himself placed on record. Twice, 11 years apart, a friendship with a senior ANC political figure, no less than the head of state, spending roughly 4 decades. How can anybody really in their right mind pretend that there can be an apprehension of bias in a situation like this? We are saying, Chairperson, that those facts alone give rise to an objective, reasonable person's apprehension of bias. It is our submission as MK Party that that appointment was therefore a serious error of judgment, one made worse by what IDEC itself exists to do. We contend that IDEC was established in part to shield criminal justice institutions from political interference. The legislation requirement that the oversight role of IDEC be by a retired judge was not just some statement. It was a deliberate qualification to ensure impartiality. But for the minister to appoint as his oversight role a judge that has publicly brandished a 4-decade friendship with the head of a governing party does not shield IDEC from political interference. In fact, it actively invites reasonable perception of it. This appointment should never have been made without far greater caution and due diligence. And we contend that this committee is entitled to make these comments, and that this appointment should in fact be reviewed and set aside. That's our submission. And as I learned, Chair, that this appointment does not also stand alone, Chair. It is mired in further controversy, one that compounds rather than mitigates the concerns that have been raised just now. Just to remind you, Chairperson, on the 6th of November 2025, Advocate Johnson told the ad hoc committee that the minister appointed Judge Rawlinga on the 11th of October 2025 for a 5-year term. We still don't know even what happened to that part of the submission. But putting that aside, based on the minister's own version as given on the 3rd of December 2025, that submission by Advocate Johnson was actually false. We argue that if Advocate Johnson's evidence was false, why has the minister not referred the matter for investigation into whether perjury may have been committed? The minister pointed out that Section 22, capital A, which establishes that office, would come into operation on the 1st of March 2026. No such appointment could lawfully have existed on the 11th of October, even if Advocate Johnson insists. On the 3rd of December, the minister herself told Parliament emphatically and insipidly, for emphasis, that Judge Rawlinga had not yet assumed duty and that she had not received a single invoice from him. We therefore say, Chairperson, that submission alone by the minister raises another question. If Judge Rawlinga did not submit an invoice, what then was it doing at IDEC that created the impression for Advocate Johnson that he was already on duty? What was it doing in those buildings? What was it doing before the 1st of March there? What legal instrument placed him there in the first place? So the minister then announced the office's operationalization on the 10th of July in the press, some 4 months later, after the gazette of the enabling regulations. So the question is, what was that just a public relations exercise for an office that had already failed to assert its presence from 1st of March 2026 or even earlier? So not sure what purpose was being served by that 10th of July presser, given that the regulations gave effect to this position on the 1st of March already. So, Chairperson, there's nothing around this office that inspires confidence. So I want to appeal that, in fact, Judge Rawlinga himself, as a man of honor, he should just walk away from this. It's going to tarnish his very great record in the judiciary. So as I learned, Chairperson, we're saying these are not isolated complaints. They reveal a disturbing pattern. Institutions established to combat corruption appearing to operate outside the very legal framework they're entrusted to uphold, and they're protected at the very top by the officials meant to hold them accountable. We request, Chairperson, that all these submissions be formally received and processed. We request that the minister appear before this committee or furnish a full written response within 7 days and account for her role and the presence in accepting Advocate Johnson's resignation ahead of an inquiry. We request that this committee obtain urgent report from the Hawks and the National Director of Public Prosecution on the status of the criminal docket and the reasons for the delay, so that Parliament can satisfy itself that justice is being pursued without fear, favor, or prejudice. We request the necessary oversight engagements, Chair, should be scheduled without any further delay. That's my submission, Chairperson. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Honorable Manyi. Members?